It is great to be joined by these two gentlemen as Mark Drumheller does amazing work over at Yahoo Sports, taking a look at UFC, college basketball, the NFL, and so much more. And then we've got Spencer Kyte, who does an incredible job covering the entire fight game. You find most of his work over at UFC.com. Gentlemen, it is a whale of a card that we have this weekend, and it's great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you guys aboard. And let's just take this segment to really break down what is going to be the big whopper. I was joking about this a little bit off air. This is what you go through those ESPN Plus cards. This is what you go through some of those fights that are, shall we say, a little bit more off the beaten path to be able to get to. Much like myself for college basketball, you get to the NCAA tournament and you put up with like the Big South, the MEAC, what have you, to be able to get to the big round of 64. This is what you do for UFC. You put up with those smaller fights to be able to get to, Ciryl Gane versus Jon Jones. Jones, a minus 170 to a minus 175 favorite. Round prop, you're finding the over of 4.5, anywhere between minus 150 to minus 155. I'll lead off with you, Spencer. Just first look at the line. What are your thoughts on it? Just because with Jon Jones, it's a shorter line than we typically find with him, but for good reason, because it has been a while since we have seen Jon Jones.
Yeah, I think it makes sense given the 3-year layoff, given the division change. I'm actually a little surprised that it's that high. I mean, you look at 3 years, you look at the last couple of fights at light heavyweight. I still to this day will say that Dominic Reyes won that last fight. I thought Thiago Santos had a good fight against him, losing a split decision. And so to factor in 3-year layoff, move up a division and face a guy in Ciryl Gane that moves like a middleweight, that is a true athletic, dynamic, explosive heavyweight, I wouldn't have been surprised if this was an even closer line, truthfully.
I do think that it's so interesting to take a look at it because with Ian McMillan, who joined me in hour number one, he was saying the exact same thing. And Mark, what do you make out of this line? Because with Jon Jones, I know that a lot of people are telling me, man, you're getting him at a super cheap line. But it's like, if you take a look at the inverse as well, you're laying minus 170 with a guy that hasn't fought in 3 years. And if you would have said that about darn near anyone else in just about any other discipline, you'd be like, man, that's really expensive on a guy that hasn't fought in 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most interesting part is it opened up at Jones as a dog and just kind of has moved in his direction ever since. And, the hardest part for bettors is that, any kind of like historical data or anything that you look back upon, which bettors like to rely on, isn't going to be too kind to guys, leaving the sport in their prime for 3 years, moving up a weight class and then coming back in their mid-30s, right? Like it just, we don't see a lot of success when that happens. But Jon Jones is, a dynamic fighter, one of the greatest fighters of all time ever in mixed martial arts. And, can he be the exception to that? You look back at his previous fights, like Spencer talked about, he just wasn't challenged in the light heavyweight division and didn't look well the last time we seen him in the octagon. So you have to go back a really far, five or so years to really get, prime Jon Jones. And a lot of bettors are wondering, like, hey, is that guy still out there?
And I do think that it's so interesting to be able to take a look at it as well, because no doubt we're hearing about the way that Jon Jones has been preparing things out of his camp, what have you. But Spencer, what are you expecting out of Jon Jones in this fight? Just because, I mean, it's just anyone's guess at this point when you got a guy that we haven't seen in 3 years. And as Mark pointed out, you really have to look 4 or 5 years ago to really find where peak Jon Jones has been, because he also had some, shall we say, off the octagon issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't make for the best punditry, but we just don't know. There's no way to forecast what we're going to see on Saturday from Jon Jones, and that's why it's so fascinating. I wouldn't be surprised if he turns up and he's refocused, he's remotivated, he really wants to go out and become a 2-weight world champion, and we have sort of a vintage Jon Jones performance. He is one of the most talented fighters I've ever seen in my career. It wouldn't surprise me if he comes back and looks like the guy that, the last really great performance was the second fight against Alexander Gustafsson. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw a fighter like that. But at the same time, he's 35 now. As you said, there have been a bunch of issues outside of the cage in his personal life, and he's facing a guy that is a legitimate heavyweight threat. He was the interim champion. Started last year facing Francis Ngannou in a champion versus champion fight. He's the real deal. And so we're going to find out Saturday, and that's what makes this so compelling.
Oh, it is so compelling. And I don't know what to expect. Mark, do you have any sort of a handle on what we might be able to get out of Jon Jones? Because, I mean, we're able to hear some rumors and everything like that, but I just feel like there's just such a wave of unknown that is around this fight, and I don't want to be laying minus 170 to minus 175 on a big giant question mark.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to come in at this number. You know, I did play Jones. I played him at minus 165. And, you know, I think there's opportunities to get around that number if you want to play, you know, inside the distance or submission. And, you know, I think this fight really comes down to the fact that when we look at Jon Jones throughout his history, you know, when he's been challenged, he's always responded. You know, he's extremely talented and he's focused, and all the stuff that happens outside of the octagon. You know, when he has these type of massive fights, you know, he's a student of the game. He studies an opponent. And I think we've seen that leading into this, you know, in the media sessions, you know, leading up to the fight. He's talking about Ciryl Gane's weaknesses. He's talking about, you know, the wrestling, how he can get back to that, grappling, his path to victory. And I think that's really going to be the difference in this fight. I think that Jones has a massive advantage there. I think, you know, while they're standing with kickboxing, you know, Jones, you know, has thrown over 40-plus kicks in multiple fights. So I think he can kind of hold his own there until he's able to crash the distance and really, you know, work, you know, Gane in the clinch, you know, with his elbows and kind of, you know, get him to the ground. And I think once he gets him to the ground, I think it's going to be a much different fight that favors Jones. And I think that's why you see him the favorite there is he has the clearest path to victory between these two fighters. A lot has to go right for him to get there. You know, obviously, you know, he's going to have to be in shape. We don't know kind of what we're getting because of the layoff, but I think those wrestling skills probably translate, you know, longer in your career than a striker would that kind of relies on speed and reaction time more. So, you know, I played Jones here at this number, but if people are looking to get off the number, you know, I would even look at getting, you know, inside the distance or maybe even the submission prop.
And let me throw this to you as well, Mark. With regards to the round prop of 4.5, do you think the longer the fight goes, the more it bodes well for Gane? Because the biggest concern that right now I have about Jon Jones is that layoff, and what I think really takes it out of him the most is just the conditioning itself, because I feel like as the rounds go along, when you've been out of the octagon for 3 years, the longer it goes, the more that bodes in favor of Gane.
I think so, because I think if it's going into those deeper championship rounds, it's not going to be a result of Jones taking him down and not being able to finish him. Like, I think if Jones gets him to the mat early and can kind of work him round by round with takedowns, I think he's going to finish the fight. So if we end up in rounds 4 or 5, it's probably primarily a kickboxing match, and I think that's where Gane has the advantage. Absolutely.
And Spencer, how do you view this fight? Because I do think that if you like this round prop under, you're probably liking Jon Jones a little bit more. If you like it over, I think that bodes better for Gane, just because I think that he's going to have better conditioning in this fight.
I mean, I like it for Ciryl Gane as well. I think this is a fight that he can come out and win. I think there's so many questions for me about Jon. This to me is just, it really comes down to value. I'm getting plus money on a guy that I saw fight and look good in September in Paris against Tai Tuivasa. I know everything that he brings to the table. There's certainly avenues for Jon Jones to win this fight, but I just want to see what it's like for him carrying around the extra weight, what it's like when he's facing a guy that hits as hard as Ciryl Gane does. Some of the advantages that Jon had that made him so effective at light heavyweight just aren't here at heavyweight. He used to bully everybody, he used to really maximize that reach and keep everybody at bay and get out of the way of shots and never really take too much damage. That's not really going to be an option here. Ciryl Gane is going to hit him. He's going to hit him harder than anyone else has hit him in his UFC career. And for me, I like the underdog. I like Ciryl Gane to finish. And if you want to get really chasing some stuff, those 3rd, 4th, 5th round props for Ciryl Gane all look mighty tasty to me.
Yep, I do think that it's so interesting to be able to take a look at a guy that, I mean, there's been so much speculation around him. When Jon Jones is fully right, he's one of the best fighters that we've really ever seen, but I made this joke in hour number 1, and I think that it's worth pointing out again. Jon Jones has become the UFC equivalent of Bigfoot. we have heard a lot about Jon Jones. We haven't necessarily seen him a whole heck lot. But with that said, we've seen a lot out of these fighters that are going to be appearing on a card that here for UFC 285, I think it's very fascinating because we mentioned the Bones versus Gane fight. It's one of the very few that has a money line, I would say below -$4. So we're going to be talking with Mark Drumheller of Yahoo Sports, along Spencer Kyte, who does great work with most of his writing at UFC.com, about how to gauge these very chalky money line fights and what they all like on the undercard for UFC 285. Next here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Great to be rejoined by these two gentlemen. Spencer Kyte does a great job of following the UFC. You're able to find most of his work at UFC.com, and we've also got aboard Mark Drumheller, who's going to be sticking around after the segment as well, breaking down some XFL as well. So that's going to be great. He's over there at Yahoo Sports. And gentlemen, I'm going to lead off with this fight first, just because we're finding a lot of fights on this UFC 285 card involving chalky money lines, and this one is a creme de la creme. I can't remember the last time I've seen a UFC main event like this where there's been a -1900 money line like we're seeing with Bo Nickel, who's going to be taking on Jamie Pickett. I will throw this to you first, Spencer. How do you gauge a fight like this? Because, I mean, should Jamie Pickett be an underdog? Absolutely, but at the same time, I can't justify laying a -1800, -1900 in a fight like this.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can. This is absolutely a find a prop, find something that you like at a much lower number. If there's anything out there that you can find, I think Bo Nickel, I mean, everybody thinks Bo Nickel should win this fight rather handily. We see that in the odds. Jamie Pickett has lost his last two fights, both by finishes, both early in the fights as well. I mean, it's one of those fights, as I said, where you've just got to go hunting. You can find actually Bo Nickel by submission in round one at +100. It's probably not a bad bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those cases where I don't know how you gauge this fight, Mark, but I take a look at it, and sometimes in these sort of cases, you just take a money line on an underdog and you hope for mercy, but I don't even think that you could do that in this fight with Jamie Pickett. I think that it's just going to be doomsday for him, but even with that, -$1,900, -$1,800 on the money line, no thanks, I'm good.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this type of fight to me, it's just a no bet. I mean, I think that's a great angle, like looking at like the round one submission if you want to get involved. But, with, 13 fights on the card or whatnot, you don't have to bet every single one. I'll be interested to see what Nickel, the next chapter of what Nickel brings as a prospect. He's going to be a very exciting fighter. They're trying to fast track him. But, at these odds, like there's just, nothing I can do. Like I can't even put Nickel in a parlay. I'm afraid to get injured in there and blow the whole thing. You're not getting enough value in the return to even do that. So, the fight was just a pass for me.
Yep, I don't blame you there. And I know that there's another harebrained fight with a big money line that you're taking a look at, Spencer, and that would be the Alexa Grasso against Valentina Shevchenko fight. Shevchenko, not quite -1900, but you know what? It's getting up there. Where I sit here at circa, it's -860 on Shevchenko. I'm seeing as high as -1,000. What are you taking a look at in this fight? Because Shevchenko, I mean, she should be absolutely winning this fight very handily as well, and you think the same way, and you have found a way to be able to reduce the juice.
Yeah, to me, if Valentina Shevchenko is anywhere near the dominant fighter that she's been in the past, she wins this fight pretty handily. I think she gets a finish. I think she gets a stoppage. And to me, you can find that number at sort of in the -130, between 130 and 150. And to me, that's a reasonable number. I think you look at who Alexa Grasso is, what she brings to the table. It plays into who Valentina Shevchenko is as a fighter. This feels to me like a second round finish, a third round finish from Valentina Shevchenko to sort of wash away a little bit of those questions from her last fight at UFC 275 against Taila Santos. I think she absolutely dominates and gets a finish in this one.
Yep, I do think so as well. And do you have anything with regards to this fight, Mark, or is this another one of those because it is one of those big, giant, chalky money lines that you just stay away from?
Yeah, I took a little over 3.5 rounds at plus 105. So if she's going to get the finish, Shevchenko, let's hope she does it. In the late four, fifth round on this one. I just think when you look at Grasso, I like Grasso as a fighter. I think she has real crisp boxing. I think early in the fight she's going to have some success getting in and out of the pocket. She uses her feints, a lot of fluid, movement, good footwork. But I think eventually we're going to see Shevchenko just kind of wear her down with her physicality. Be able to get this fight to the mat with the grappling edge. When you look at Shevchenko's, past couple fights, 3 of the last 4 have gone over 3.5 rounds. Even her fight with Lauren Murphy, she outstruck her 98-11, and still that went late into the 4th round. So, I think there's opportunity here for this one to go over. I think Grasso is a lot more game than she's getting credit for. Don't think she can win. Don't think she's live as an underdog, but I do think she's going to be able to put up a fight just because I think she's going to be moving. It's going to be tough in the early rounds for Shevchenko to get her hands on her. And I think that's going to help her extend the fight, even if she might even steal round 1 or round 2 possibly, and, have, before Shevchenko really turns up the heat and puts her on her back and really works her with her grappling.
And this is one that I know that you're taking a look at as well, Mark. You're going to be taking a look at an underdog in this one. Hard to do so in the Grasso versus Shevchenko fight, but we've got Duplessis going to be taking on Derek Brunson. Brunson's right around a plus 175 to a plus 180 underdog, and I think this one is probably going to be wrapped up over 1.5 rounds is at minus 150. What has you on Derek Brunson in this fight, as he's a pretty sizable underdog, and we've actually seen quite a bit of money come in on him, as he was actually closer to plus $2 on the open.
Yeah, that's where I got him, plus 200. And, I think it's a good price for him. We know Brunson's been game in this spot throughout his career. He's coming off a knockout loss to Cannonier. But, if you look at that before that, reeled off a couple wins. His previous loss was Adesanya. So, good level of competition there. And where Duplessis, is a lot of fun to watch. I love watching the guy wild, reckless, brings the fight to you, throws multiple strikes from a bunch of crazy different angles, but, with that recklessness in the cage comes opportunity for Brunson. Brunson's a guy who wants to, get takedowns, get him to the ground, grind him out. And I think when you're throwing all those crazy shots from all over the place, it opens you up. It impacts your, grappling defense. And I think Brunson is going to be able to take advantage of that, get him to the cage. Brunson knows he's getting later in his career. He needs to protect his chin, protect his durability, get this fight to the ground, where he's safe and he can kind of impose his will. And I think he's going to do that. So, I thought at this price, as a dog, even now, 170, 180, I like Derek Brunson to win the fight as the underdog.
And I know that you both are taking a look at this fight as well, and I'll start with you, Spencer. Jalen Turner is going to be taking on Matisse Gamrot. Gamrot right around a minus 210, minus 215 favorite. Round prop, it's at 2.5, but very much juicy under, right around minus 165. What are you taking a look at in this one, as Turner has seen the money come in against him, and been very curious to take a look at this, because I'm a little bit surprised to see the money come in so badly against him, going from right around plus 145 on the open to more around plus 180.
I mean, I'm taking Turner, but it's very much I like the price and I like the young fighter. Is this the moment that he sort of breaks through and has the biggest win of his career? Matisse Gamrot is a hell of a fighter. He lost last time out to Beneil Dariush, but there's no shame in that. He was a 2-weight world champion in KSW over in Poland. He's rightfully the favorite here. But I look at Jalen Turner having won 5 straight. All of his victories are by stoppage. His best performance of his career was last time out. And I just think with the numbers that are there in terms of the money line, I like the finish prop at plus 275 as well for a guy that has finished all of his career fights. I just think this is an opportunity maybe for the young fighter to really have that next transcendent performance and get the veteran out of there.
And Mark, I know that you're taking a look at this Turner fight as well. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, I'll give you the other side. I'm on Gamrot. I laid the $2.15 here with Gamrot, and I think that's the right side. I think this is a big jump for Turner. Obviously, if he can get this type of win, it's going to be huge for his career. But Gamrot's a guy who, super high motor, very explosive, very intentional with his wrestling. He's going to be relentless, tenacious. And Turner, very big, very powerful, very long, going to try and keep him on the end, on the outside of range. But I think Gamrot gets inside. And, with that explosiveness and power from Turner, comes a little bit of stiffness in his defensive wrestling. And I think that's going to be a factor. I think when Gamrot gets him to the ground, Gamrot's a guy really great at scrambles, positional grappling. I think Turner's going to kind of struggle and get overwhelmed in those spots. So I like Gamrot to come out, as the winner here. I like the price, actually. I think it should be a little bit wider, but, I can understand Turner's an ascending fighter. I just think he's a little too green, a little too much too soon to back him right now.
And a man that it's never too much too soon. That'd be you, Spencer. You do amazing work over there at UFC.com. I know you're one of their main freelancers. Always do appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.